In Australia, it's estimated that 45% of people will experience a mental health condition in their lifetime. But if we talk more about mental illness, address the issues, and be open and honest, there's a lot that can be done. This is the Mental Health Show with Mark Aston.
Happy New Year, everyone. I hope 2019 is a good one for you. And it's certainly going to be a good one for my next guest. Kate Russell runs a successful business called The Conflict Coach. Kate works with businesses and companies that are having internal issues with employees. Kate has also written a book called Leaders Who Lead. So, Kate's together, confident, positive, fit and healthy. But 4 years ago, Kate's life was a mess. We'll get to that soon, and Kate will tell you how she turned all of that around. But firstly, let's talk about the Kate we know now. Kate, welcome to the Mental Health Show.
I'm really well, thank you.
Good. A little bit about your business, and thank you so much indeed for giving me your book, Leaders Who Lead. What was the main reason behind writing that book?
I wrote the book because I work with a lot of leaders who really struggle with the day-to-day stuff. So I wanted to create a handbook to just give them some basics about how to deal with things and to start looking at their problems a little bit differently. And so instead of thinking about everything as a problem, it's about what is behind that problem and what do we need to change so it's not a problem, instead of thinking that the world is going to end because there's a problem. Yeah,
in other words, it's coming up with a solution and being confident about the fact that you can come up with a solution.
That's right. And it's about looking after people. So a lot of what I do is about how can we look after people, because then when we do, we get better outcomes. But what often happens is that in business and in leadership, we've often got to be successful. So we've got to generate income, we've got to meet board requirements, we've got to meet KPIs, all those things. And that can create a lot of stress, and that stress can then result in people lacking trust and trying to control outcomes significantly. And that's not necessarily going to be good outcomes for everybody. So then you get micromanaging, you get people being punished, nobody's going to speak up if they make a mistake, all of those type of things. If we look after people and we get them included in the decision-making process and we have a better understanding about what makes people tick and why they're behaving in this manner rather than accusing them for doing something bad, I think we're going to get better outcomes.
And wrapped up in all of this is mental health in the workplace, isn't it?
It's huge. And I see it on a very regular basis. Because I've got a background in mediation, I regularly get called in because there's been a crisis. And the crisis quite often has something to do with a mental health issue. And the bosses often think that what the next best step is to have a mediation, and that's not necessarily the right way to go at all.
So that's a mediation between two people who might not be getting on well in a workplace.
That's correct.
And if that's not the best idea in certain circumstances, what are you suggesting?
I'm suggesting that sometimes you need to I speak to the parties individually, but I don't necessarily get them to speak together at that time because that might not be appropriate. It's then going back to management and having a look at what's actually triggering this behaviour, and does this person need other supports? And most often they do. And so if you can get that person then to go and get some help, it's starting a conversation. It's saying, look, I'm not sure what's going on for you, but I'm concerned for you, and is there something that we can do to help you? Because often I think, and I've come across this quite regularly, people are dealing with mental health issues, but they're undiagnosed. They're just very stressed and behaving in a manner that's not okay in the workplace.
But they think it's normal.
They think it's normal, and because it's become their norm.
Absolutely, yeah.
And they need an opportunity to have somebody look after them and listen to them and say, I reckon you might want to go and get some help. And often when they speak to me, because I'm outside of the business, I'm not there every day, and I don't have a vested interest. If I say those things, then they're more likely to hear me than they might hear. It's a bit like mums and kids, you can't hear the people close to you, but sometimes you can hear a stranger tell you exactly the same thing.
So in the cases of the companies and businesses you're working with, the bosses and the CEOs and the general managers and the unit managers, they need to be inclusive as well, don't they, in the whole process?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that, the reality about mental health is that people with mental health can function and they can contribute, and we, it's not all or nothing. But people with mental health issues then also have to take some responsibility for how they look after themselves so that they can be their best selves at work.
Yes.
And it's about having those conversations so that you can make that happen.
And that can get really complicated in the sense that a lot of people who have mental health issues might be self-medicating, with various substances, whether it be alcohol or whether it be drugs or whether it be gambling or sex or whatever it might be. Yeah. So that becomes quite complicated, doesn't it?
I think it does, and I think the other complicating factor to all of this is that sometimes people are scared to speak up because they think they're going to lose their job.
Absolutely.
And sadly, some people do.
And that is... that again brings to the top of the conversation how your boss or the CEO of the company or the general manager you're working under, how they perceive the situation and how much they understand the situation.
Absolutely.
Because, as you say, quite rightly so, some people won't go to that particular person because they either don't trust them or they don't know what they're going to say. And as you say, all of a sudden you go to this particular boss who isn't experienced, for example, and all that person is doing is thinking about running the business and making sure the business makes money.
Absolutely. And
this particular person goes to that boss and the boss says, well, look, if you're not well, maybe we need to think about, either terminating your employment or placing you somewhere else. And those people don't want that, do they?
No, they don't necessarily want that at all.
They just want sympathy. Well, not sympathy, but they want a sympathetic ear.
They want a sympathetic ear, and they need to be heard, and they need someone that they can trust, because then they can work through the issue. If they don't have an opportunity to work through the issue, if they get a brick wall in the first instance, if nobody's listening to them, or they're going to find themselves being now micromanaged as a result, or something, incredibly hideous like that, they're going to look for an exit themselves. I mean, it becomes a very difficult situation. But it's those stresses, like the bosses who are looking at the bottom line and thinking this is a problem rather than an opportunity. They're dealing with their own stuff.
Yeah,
they're often
great point.
Dealing with their own very significant stresses.
They're probably looking for someone to go to as well and thinking exactly the same as that employee.
I think that's right.
Yeah,
I think that there's a lot of very, very stressed leaders in our world.
Well, that's a topic probably for another day, but if that is the case, and I don't doubt it, then we've got a lot of issues that we need to sort out in the workplace.
I think we do. And I mean, I think that if you think about, you look at your Facebook feed on a Monday and everybody who says they don't want to go to work, and I think it's bosses and it's their staff. The bosses are complaining that they can't get staff to do what they want them to do. They're lazy, they're disengaged, they're all of those things. And you've got the staff saying, I don't like my boss, they're mean, they're controlling, there's a lot of bad culture out there.
So people listening now would think, wow, this is great. Kate written a book, she's running a business, she's a leader, she's professional, she's in control, she knows what she's doing, she's organised, etc., etc. You may be all of those things now. You may not be, but you appear to be all those things now. But that wasn't the case a number of years ago, was it?
Oh, absolutely not. No, I've been in that space, that dark space. So
can you explain how it led to the point of you finally realising that things weren't normal, that they were abnormal?
Yeah, it all happened in January 2013. I went to my doctor because I couldn't sleep, and my doctor took my blood pressure, and she said, I think the machine's broken, so she went out and got another blood pressure machine. And then she went, no, it's not broken, and you have to go straight to hospital.
Really?
So my blood pressure was 220 over 110.
So did you feel ill?
No.
No, but you
just
couldn't sleep?
Couldn't sleep.
Yeah, okay.
Couldn't sleep, very stressed, couldn't sleep. And I just kept thinking if I could get some sleep, I'd feel on top of things again, but I just couldn't sleep.
So that was your norm, though? That
was my norm.
Yeah. So you went to hospital?
I went straight to hospital. I was there for 4 days. They had to check all of my vital organs because nobody knew how long my blood pressure had been at that level for. Fortunately, I didn't have any major damage to any of my organs, which is really, really cool. It was a horrible 4 days. I was, on a they were checking my blood pressure constantly. So
Yep.
I had the cuff on all the time, which is very annoying.
You were married at the time?
Yeah, I was married at the time.
And kids?
Kids, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Kids. And I took my computer with me.
Mm-hmm.
When I got to the hospital, the doctor gave me some Valium because I was so hyper, and it literally didn't touch the sides.
Wow.
I was just talking 100 miles an hour. And for me, it was normal. It was just like, I can't be here. I don't have time to do this. I've got to go.
Yeah.
And they said, you're not going anywhere. And then they did some blood tests, and they came back and they said, how much do you drink? So I lied.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, 2 or 3 glasses a day. Realistically, I was drinking a bottle of red a day, sometimes more.
And that was your norm?
That was my norm.
Yeah.
But I was functioning.
Yeah,
I was self-employed. I was generating good income.
Yep. What sort of mother were you at that time?
At that time, I was a grumpy mother. I think that I've done parenting pretty well a lot of the time, but by that stage, I was very easily triggered by anything that went wrong. So
Took things personally?
Took things personally. I have a daughter who's got disabilities. She's got Asperger's and the like, and she'd have a meltdown, and I'd take that personally, and then we'd have these full-on rows, and it was ugly. It was ugly.
At the time, though, did you think it was that just normal at the time?
Look, it became the norm. She was a teenager, so I just put it down to her being a teenager. I knew I was tired and stressed, but I just thought, look, I'm working so hard, and you should all be a lot more grateful.
Yep.
And I actually don't know how I
got through it.
Yeah. I actually don't even know how I did so much. I was so productive, but destroying my personal relationships.
Yeah, things around you.
Yeah.
What sort of wife were you?
Look, I think all in all, I was reasonable. My husband is an extraordinarily wonderful human being, and he was very tolerant and patient, and he's always been terrific with the kids and helping me manage all of that. And so he was very tolerant, and I was drinking a lot, and he was drinking not nearly as much as me, but he was probably drinking too much at that time as well. We both sort of...
Which was partly enabling you, but these things happen.
Oh, yeah. It was just sort of a pattern that we'd got into.
Of course, yeah.
And I just wasn't home very much. Like, my way of dealing with the stresses was to work 100 hours a week plus produce theatre. Yeah. Just, amateur theatre. And I was just never home. And so I wasn't actually available. I was great fun on a weekend, go and get drunk with somebody on, family and friends on weekends, but I wasn't good company.
And what about physically?
Oh my God, I was a wreck. So at that time, I weighed about 100 kilos. I could barely move.
Really?
I couldn't walk very far at all. I was so unfit. And what happened with my drinking is I'd drink, I'd feel terrible, then I'd eat stuff to try and make myself feel better.
Then you drink again.
And then, it was just a terrible
On goes
cycle.
the cycle,
Really ugly. So, I was my mother was big, I was big, I just thought it was genetic. And I knew I needed to do something, but it was just...
You couldn't do it.
Too hard.
And did you hate your body?
Oh, my God.
If you don't mind me asking.
No, look, I really did. And I think it was because I didn't have a great relationship with my mum, and she was very large, and I just saw myself being a mini mum, and I didn't like that. And so, I did. I truly, I just covered myself in great big baggy clothes at the time.
So self-esteem would have been rock bottom, but you're still functioning?
Still functioning.
That's the weird thing about it, isn't it?
It is really weird. There were certain elements of my life that I was really proud of.
Yeah.
So the involvement that I had in theatre was great, and we were kicking goals. And
you were confident in that space?
Yeah, and I was confident in that space. And there are things that, when I'm working with people in my work, somehow that just happens and I can do that. But around me was just falling to pieces.
And, if we went back then, what sort of things was your husband or maybe your kids saying to you now that you remember that was sort of almost like a plea for help, or were they sort of oblivious, or did they just think it was normal as well?
I think that it just became our norm. I think it really was, because my son at the time, he's 21 now, so that he was a young teen, and I can remember he said to me recently, because I lost so much weight, but he said to me back then, he said, I didn't ever know you were overweight. Like he just didn't, it didn't
He thought it was
occur
just
to him.
natural. He
just
thought what he saw there was what Mum was.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the norm.
So, so you were in hospital for four days.
Mm-hmm.
So just again, just reiterate what sorts of things went on in those 4 days.
So I had to go and get CAT scans and various tests to sort of see whether or not all my organs were functioning. So they had to check liver, kidneys, heart, everything, just to see whether or not I'd done some damage. I'm confident my blood pressure had probably been quite high for some time, but I'm very fortunate I didn't destroy anything in the meantime. But they said I was at risk of having a heart attack or a stroke within days.
So which hospital did you go into?
Wakefield.
Wakefield. So, but you went in under the guise of having physical issues, yeah?
Yes.
So when did it become apparent that you had mental issues? How did that sort of materialise?
No one ever discussed any of that with me, ever. So I had a cardiologist who put me on medication to get my blood pressure down, and he just said to me, you need to drink less, you need to exercise, and you need to look after yourself better. And I left, and I went away for a year, and I did a little bit of those things. And it was actually a year later that I actually took action. But initially, the first year, I didn't. I just went, don't be ridiculous, I don't have time for this. And no one suggested anything.
And did you change at all in that year?
Not really.
Not really?
Not really. Like, I played around the edges, but...
Yeah. Maybe you stopped drinking for a couple of days or something,
that's
or
right.
whatever it might have been.
Yeah, I reduced the amount.
Yeah.
For a few days. But I was on medication, so I just relaxed, thinking, well, I'm on medication, I've got this sorted now, and I just kept going because I go 100 miles an hour all the time. So
that's interesting. So a year afterwards, what happened then?
Back to January. So this thing about January not sleeping, and I went back to the doctor because I couldn't sleep. And this time, because my blood pressure was down, he took a blood test. And he came back to me and he said, your liver function test is off the charts. And I went, oh, okay, that's news I don't want to hear.
No,
and
not surprisingly though.
Not surprising,
No.
but it was. And he said, what I want you to do is, he said it's probably alcohol, but it could be something else. So don't drink for 3 weeks and let's see what happens to the test. So
how did that go?
Oh my God. Well, I can tell you, I planned for it. So we started on a Monday. We had some drinks on that final weekend, and then I didn't drink. And God bless my husband, but he said, well, if you're not drinking, I'm not drinking.
Well, that helps.
And that was just fantastic.
That helps. That's a wonderful, wonderful gesture.
Yes. So we didn't drink, and it was January, and so everybody was, it was parties and all of that. But
wow.
We didn't drink for 3 weeks. And I went back, and the blood test came back, and my liver function test had gone down. The results had gone down, but not dramatically. And he said, well, this could be because of long-term liver damage, or it could be something else. And he referred me to a specialist. And I'd made a decision in that moment, once I got those results, that I wasn't going to drink again, because I hadn't drunk for 3 weeks and I'd survived, even though
I'd started the
process.
Yeah.
And I thought, at the time, this is going to be like cutting off my right arm.
Well, I think we all feel that.
But I did get through it.
Yeah.
And then I just made a decision not to drink.
And do you know why? Do you know? Well, you sort of explained why, but do you know how that decision has materialised and you've stuck by it? Because so many people have so much trouble doing that.
Yeah,
Kate.
I think it's one, because I got told that if I didn't change, I was going to die.
Yeah.
And I didn't have any time for dying.
No. Well, you were so busy.
I was so busy.
Had so many things going on in your life, which you can only really do when you're alive.
That's right. And I love my kids to pieces, so I wanted that. But also, I'm not very good on moderation.
Okay.
So I went to the specialist.
It's all or nothing.
It's all or nothing.
Yeah.
I went to the specialist, and he said that I've got a very high risk of getting liver cancer. Because of my drinking history. And
Wow. Okay.
I said, okay, I don't really want to go down that path. And he said the only way to avoid that is to lose weight, exercise, and keep your drinking to a minimum. And he said, you can drink occasionally, but...
If you can do that, yeah.
But you see, I just...
Yeah, I'm the same.
I can't.
Yeah, I know.
I'm all or nothing.
I feel like a beer now. Do you want to join me?
See, I don't. That's really interesting.
Which is a
'cause
great thing.
After 5 years, I don't miss it at all.
Okay, so I stupidly interjected there. But anyway, so that was it.
Yeah.
That was it.
That was it.
Wow.
That was it. But other things happened that supported that. So we swapped happy hour for going for a walk.
Oh, great. This is happy hour at home.
At home.
So, yeah, so that is a great strategy, isn't it? When you start to feel like a drink, instead of just sitting around going, I'm not going to do anything, but I'm going to try not to drink, you made sure that you were doing something to replace it.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
And the lovely thing about aerobic fitness is that it increases dramatically once you start exercising. So when we started, I was really struggling. But very quickly, I could go a whole lot further.
Wow.
And then I got bored with that. So I joined a gym.
Oh, okay, good.
So by the end of February, after 4 weeks, I joined the gym. And I was just on the treadmill and boring stuff. And then I got bored with that as well. I'm not very good at watching television and things like that.
Okay.
I get bored very quickly about lots of things.
Yep.
And I decided I need to go out. And so I started the Couch to 5K running app.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And
which sort of, generates little goals for you and keeps you motivated, yeah.
And I did that, and literally I remember, I think it was July or something, and I ran all the way from my house in Beaumont to Norwood to Argos for breakfast.
Wow.
And it was very slow, and my husband was away that weekend, but I did it anyway.
You got there.
And I got there, and I ran, and I remember getting there, and I just burst into tears because I was so proud of myself for doing something that I had never done before.
Oh, how wonderful.
It was just...
What a wonderful thing. Yeah.
I'd never run. I'd never, ever run. Like, I'd spent my life avoiding exercise.
And when you got to Argos, you had a huge, great big hamburger. I'll bet you didn't.
No, I didn't.
No.
No.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So... So obviously the fitness made a difference. Now, and sitting here now, how much have you lost, or how much did you lose? Or
So
weight?
in that year, so that was 2014. So from sort of middle of January 2014 to the 24th of September, I lost 30 kilos.
30 kilos.
And the reason I know it was that date is because I know when I stopped drinking, but then I lost all this weight, and it was my daughter's wedding.
Oh, wow.
And so... as I tell people,
you look fantastic.
I looked hot at her wedding.
That's a lovely, but it's lovely you can say that.
Yeah.
Though.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's a fantastic thing, and I'll bet your daughter was proud of you. I bet your whole family was proud of you.
It was extraordinary. There were people there that didn't recognise me, that I hadn't seen for a while, and they didn't recognise me.
Have you kept any photos?
Oh yeah.
You have.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is fantastic, and you must have been. Well, as I say, you must have been so proud, and everyone must have been so proud. So, the fitness. Loss of weight. What's your blood pressure now?
Oh, it's always
so
good.
It's normal.
It's normal.
It's just not, and you're not on tablets.
No, I am on tablets. My doctor said I'm going to be on tablets forever.
Just to be safe.
Yeah. Well,
okay.
And there's a family history and all of that.
Okay.
But I am on. They've been reduced over time. But I'm on medication on a daily basis.
Yeah.
But it's minimal, and it's just part of what I do now.
And what about your how you go about your daily life and how you feel mentally now compared to back then? Do you feel? Well, no, I'll ask you. What is the difference? Give me an overview as to how you handle things now compared to how you were handling things back then when you were unwell and drinking and overweight.
Look, I think. It's hard to put words to it, except that I feel so much better now than I did then. And I feel I have a confidence that I didn't have before.
Yeah.
Back then, I would get into overwhelm very quickly, and I'd be very stressed, and then I'd yell at my kids.
Yep.
I could be so polite and charming to clients, but
Yep.
when it came to
You'd
my
overreact.
kids, I'd overreact.
Yep.
I'd see dirt that, wasn't a problem.
Absolutely,
It was
yep.
just, narky. And
which is draining too. It's very draining, isn't
it's
it?
exhausting.
Yeah.
And then if something went wrong, I'd just say, well, that's an excuse for a drink. Like a drink became, I've had a hard day, I've had a hard life, this has went wrong, therefore
I deserve
a drink.
Yeah.
And now things don't seem to affect me I'm just not as stressed. I manage things a whole lot better.
Yeah.
So, and now if something goes wrong, I just have a cup of tea and go for a walk. Like I use exercise. Sometimes I have to, I take the dogs out and I just go for a long walk and I clear my head. But I don't get in that same level of stress that I used to because I just manage everything so much better.
And well, I was going to say, and therefore you can manage everything so much better.
Yeah. And I do exercise at the beginning of every day. And if I do that, I just feel like I can manage anything.
Wow.
But when that stops, and so this last year's been quite tricky because I had 2 grandchildren born within 6 weeks of each other, and that just created a whole lot of, helping out and stuff like that. And so some of my exercise routine fell off. And then all of a sudden I found excuses to do things I would, not drinking, but just eating things or whatever that I wouldn't have eaten before.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, no, I have to, one of my non-negotiables is
the exercise.
I have to do exercise.
Isn't that interesting? It's interesting that you say that. So of all the things we've spoken about, the exercise is very much the driver to everything, really, isn't it?
It is. It truly is, because the thing is, if I exercise, I don't want to stuff up all my hard work by then eating something I shouldn't eat or whatever.
Not, yeah.
So it just keeps me on track for everything else. And I just feel so much better when I exercise. I've got a clearer head. I problem solve. I can be creative.
Did you have a lot of shame back then?
It's
a common word used, isn't it?
The level of shame was extraordinary, and I do remember. I just remember doing it over and over again, waking up every morning and going, I'm not going to do that again. And every night at 5 o'clock,
you would.
I'd start.
Yeah.
It was like I just couldn't not, and it was like, I couldn't stop until that doctor said, don't drink for 3 weeks. And then because a doctor, a third party, comes and tells me that I have to do something different, if anybody else had told me not to do that,
you would have ignored it.
Yeah.
See, but you're very fortunate. I won't say lucky because you make your own luck, but I think you're very fortunate in a way, or maybe not fortunate, you're ultra strong to be able to change, because there are a lot of people who go through a lot of horrible things in life. They'll have a car accident, they might kill someone, they might lose their job, whatever it might be, as they might lose their family as a result of their alcohol intake, but they'll still keep doing it. Now, they're pretty... I mean, they're not the same as a doctor saying you'll die if you were... But I get the feeling that person is probably almost unhelpable, if that's a word, unhelpable, yeah. But I get the feeling that even if a doctor said to a person that had been through all of that, hey, you're going to die if you don't stop drinking, I reckon it would still be really difficult for that type of person, as I say, who's already been through a whole lot of horror as a result of alcohol. I just don't... As hard as it is for me to say, I just don't think there's any hope for someone at that level, which is a sad thing. I could be wrong, but I just get that feeling.
Yeah, look, I don't know, no. and I know... I think resilience is a really interesting subject.
Yeah.
And I really do. And I see it around me all the time, and I sometimes wonder, why am I resilient and somebody else isn't? And what's happened in my life that I can do this? I don't know, but I'm just driven to be a good parent to my kids, and and the success has bred success. So the more, it just got easier rather than harder.
Yeah.
But it is. I think resilience is really interesting.
Do you talk about this here? Because you've only gave me that yesterday. Do you talk about some of this in your book?
Yes, I do.
Leaders Who Lead?
Yeah, I do. I talk about stress management, and I tell my story with alcohol as part of that, because what I find is that I think stress is a major contributor to conflict. Yeah. And stress is one of those things that we can manage to some extent.
Absolutely, yeah. And we've got control over it.
We've got control over it. We can...
It's our responsibility, yeah.
We can do things to reduce our stress levels, and we can do that personally, and we can do that as a workplace. Yeah. And I tell my story because I think that it gets people thinking about what are they actually doing that is causing them to feel so stressed.
Yeah, yeah.
And as a community, we do some bizarre behaviours that are just not helpful towards reducing stress. So we finish a work week by going to the pub and drinking too much and eating food that's not good for us. Yeah, yeah. If you're looking after yourself, I mean,
you wouldn't be doing that.
You wouldn't do that. You'd find other ways.
Yeah, well, advertising has a lot to do with that, doesn't it? Making alcohol look trendy and the right thing to do. And
that's right. And self-esteem. I think it's really interesting because before, when I was drinking, I would think that anybody in Lycra who got up early and exercised was, I just wrote them off. Like, what a loser. And now, as I put my Lycra on, I feel exactly the opposite. But I just used to write those people off.
Yeah.
And I think it's really easy when you're feeling bad about yourself that you just want to be in the same boat as everybody else. You want you want everybody else to suffer like you're suffering or whatever. But when I feel good, I want everybody else to feel good.
Of course. Has it improved the way you do your job?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Without a shadow of a doubt.
Really?
I think I've got much greater empathy. I think I can see things differently now. I just, in the past, I was a mediator, I fixed a problem. Now I think I look at it much more holistically.
Yeah,
I'm
it was a bit
looking
more
at-
mechanical back then, but now it's deeper.
Way deeper. Because I know that I needed somebody to tell me, and I needed some empathy, and I needed, when you're feeling that much shame, to tell somebody how much you're actually drinking. I don't think I ever actually told the truth until I lost the weight and stopped drinking.
Yeah.
Prior to that, I lied to everybody.
Yeah. And
everybody, my friends and family knew how much I drank.
Yeah.
But anybody outside, I just lied.
Yeah. In terms of what you'd like to achieve, say from now, have you sort of set some goals that obviously you wouldn't have even given a second thought to way back then? I mean, are there things now that you want to achieve that you probably never ever thought you could back then?
Oh, yeah. Well, physically, I did completed a half marathon in 2015.
Wow.
And I'm looking to see if I can do that again this year. But one of the things that we did as a family was we started doing the Mother's Day Classic. So my mum was never, she could barely move, and we just, exercise wasn't
part of her life.
Her life.
Yeah.
And so we've done the Mother's Day Classic ever since I lost weight, and it's just the entire family comes together and we do that.
Isn't that wonderful?
And that's a really lovely thing. But now I can travel and I can go overseas and I can walk to places and I can go and see things that I couldn't see before. I've climbed Mount Lofty, and
you never ever thought
I
you'd
never
do
thought
that,
I'd
no.
Again.
Well, when you said travel as well, Kate, it's interesting because if you're unfit and overweight, even just going to Heathrow and arriving and then having to walk to another gate, like even that, or walk to get your luggage, or actually pull your luggage, let alone get on and off of buses and get on and off of ships and sort of do everyday stuff. I mean, before you even get to your hotel or your destination, you've got to do things that you've got to be reasonably fit for.
Absolutely. So yeah, travel's a big one. I really want to travel a whole lot more, but the thing is keeping fit. So I'm nearly 56, and I can remember a long time ago, I had decided that by the time I was 60, I was going to stop dieting. This was like when I was in my 20s.
Oh, yeah,
it was because I was always struggling with my weight. And here I am getting close to 60, and it's like feels like my life's beginning, not ending.
Isn't that fantastic?
Yeah.
And that mentality is going to drive you forward too.
Oh, yeah.
That mentality is a wonderful mentality, as you're sort of alluding to, rather than the mentality of other people who are saying, oh, I'm getting close to 60 now, my life's about to end, sort of thing. Your business is called?
It's called The Conflict Coach.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And you have a website? Or
I have a website.
Which is?
It's theconflictcoach.com.au.
Okay, that's fine. Kate Russell, thank you.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you, Mark.
This is The Mental Health Show with Mark Aston.